We're the best, we're the beautiful, we're the only Ghostbusters. We're back!
I'm sure I'm not the only one who looks back fondly at the Ghostbuster films. I mean, as a kid, I dressed up as Egon Spengler for a Halloween party at my primary school, and I also had all the toys that got released alongside the cartoon series. I can remember watching the second film with my sister on VHS countless times, and the both of us being scared shitless by Peter McNichol during that scene where his eyes turned into goddamn flashlights. And then the two of us cracking up at the scene with Slimer driving the bus.
Oh, it's you. Okay, but I didn't know you had your license.
There was just something about those films that resonated with audiences around the world, and I think I'm one of the few people who also likes the sequel as much as the first film. Yeah, that's right, you heard me. Anyway, my point is that they're both two very quotable films with lots of memorable scenes, and for a kid, they're as funny as they are frightening.
Does anybody want to play Parcheesi? Okay, who brought the dog?
Now, I know this is the same month that they're bringing out the new reboot, and you're probably wondering what I think about it, but do you really need to ask? Every Sonny Jim who grew up loving the original films already knows it's a colossal piece of shit anyway.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true.
So what I will talk about instead is an unfinished mod for Doom 2 called Ghostbusters Doom, which was an ambitious project that attempted to recreate some of the scenes from the first two films and adapt them into the Doom engine, but it never quite got finished. The last update for the mod was way back in 2002, at which point the mod had roughly 15 levels, 8 based off the first film and then 7 based off the second film. What's cool is that these levels somewhat followed the events from the film, solely playing as Egon Spengler. The first level is set in the New York Public Library, where the guys first encounter the librarian ghost. Then a couple levels later you're in the Sedgwick Hotel during the sequence in the film where they pursue and capture Slimer. At this point there's an entirely new level where you're in a haunted mansion rescuing some real estate agents before the final couple levels at the Shandor building with a showdown against Gozer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Then for Ghostbusters 2, you start off in the New York City sewers before a battle against half of the Scoleri brothers in federal court before some utterly unfinished levels in a subway station, and finally against Vigo the Carpathian in the art museum. Well, a painting of Vigo anyway.
Slime me.
Unfinished is really the key word here, as half the levels are literally unfinishable, and to progress onward you often have to use the level select code just to keep going, which annoyingly takes away all of your weapons. You've got to give them credit though, the look and feel of some of these levels gets it remarkably close to how it looked in the films, especially the level set on the top of the Shandor building and the opening level set in the library. It's just that most of the features and overall design is sorely lacking without any kind of polish. I mean, certain maps are literally just a single room with nothing to see or do, and other maps lack any real detail or structure. There's a level set in the streets of New York where you're driving around the Ecto-1. Now when I say you're driving around the Ecto-1, it's really just an overlay on top of the heads-up display. And there doesn't seem to be any point to it aside from it just mildly affecting your movement speed. There's only a couple of levels that feel somewhat finished. One of these is the Haunted Mansion where you're supposed to be rescuing those real estate agents. I kinda get the feeling this was the ultimate goal with the mod, to have all of these levels based off the scenes from the film and maybe to have levels set in between that just made up a series of random assignments and just other jobs the Ghostbusters had to do to kind of like pay the rent. The mansion is kinda cool, but the underlying issue is that the weapons in the game are really underpowered and the enemies have a high health pool and dish out damage pretty quickly. They're not staggered either from taking damage, which means they'll just wail on you relentlessly, making them just brutally difficult pretty much all the time. Most of the weapons are just gadgets we briefly saw in the films, resuited to fit Doom's original arsenal. So the PKE meter we saw Egon and Ray using all the time replaces the pistol. A lot of the other gadgets, the names of which I only knew from looking them up on Wikipedia, replace the chain gun, shotgun, and rocket launcher, all of which you'll probably recognise from scenes in the films. Like that silver thingy that Ray uses in the museum in the second film. Yeah, you'll know the one. But the most important weapon is the Proton Pack. Now, the Proton Pack replaces the plasma gun and now has infinite ammo, which I guess sounds awesome, but it's practically useless as it does bugger all damage. And I think using the weaker weapons is honestly more effective. Again, like seeing all the levels in the mod, the only way to get your hands on some of these weapons, at least as far as I could tell, is to use cheat codes, which you'll probably have to do a fair bit, as warping from level to level, as I said, is going to remove all your equipped weapons. I'll also say the music is a bit of a highlight. As you'd expect, they're all MIDI files, but some of them are really spot-on renditions of the original soundtrack, as well as a MIDI version of the theme tune and Jackie Wilson's Higher and Higher, which we heard in the second film. But overall, the whole thing is just like a big cock tease.
We came, we saw, we
we kicked its ass.
You really see the potential the whole thing had, even through these short glimpses throughout the largely unfinished levels, but ultimately we'll never get to play the full mod, and it's a damn shame. If you want a real Ghostbusters game, which is also more of a new Ghostbusters movie than the recent reboot is, then I suggest checking out Ghostbusters the video game. Not only does it feature most of the original cast and a lot of characters from the two films, but it was also written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. And in this one, you're actually playing a recruit working for the Ghostbusters, which, let's face it, was every kid's dream. Now, this is by far the best Ghostbusters game ever made, and it still looks and plays pretty damn well, and it manages to capture the mayhem of using your own Proton Pack perfectly, with a funny and well-written story to boot.
Yeah, perfect.
I'd even say there's more jokes in the first level of this game than there is in the entire Ghostbusters reboot.
Is this true? Yes, it's true.
Anyway, getting back to the mod, there is still a bit of novelty to be had out of the whole thing, but you just have to accept that it's very rough around the edges. And if the phrases ID Clev and ID KFA don't mean much to you, then, well, they will after you've spent a bit of time with this mod. You can download the mod and easily run it with a source port like ZDoom, and it takes all of 5 seconds to get it going. Just remember to not cross the streams.
Get her!